Hey everyone, welcome back to InsightRx. Today we have Ryan Encarnacion, who attended Athens Drive High School in North Carolina from 2010 to 2014, where he developed an interest in political sciences and later statistics after taking AP Stats. At NC State University, through majoring in political science, his passion for statistics grew, and he declared a minor late in his junior year. Despite being told it was unlikely, he completed the minor through persistence. Through stats courses, Ryan learned about job fairs and met leaders at Chiltern who offered him a stats programming internship. He began just days after graduating in May 2018. Although Chiltern was later acquired by Covance and then was later acquired into LabCorp, Ryan has remained in the same role, gaining professional growth and opportunities. He notes it's rare for someone with a formal math or science background to enter stats programming and credits his work to help support managers' hard work and flexibility. Welcome to InsightRx.
Thanks for having me.
First, we're going to start off by talking a little bit of your high school life. Back in high school, you said political science was your main interest. What drew you to political science?
So my family growing up, my father actually got a history degree, and they were very into history and political science, and I think that's really where that initial interest developed. But as time went on, I just was much more interested in kind of mathematics, statistics, and so it really just, I guess, the interest initially developed for my family.
That's really cool. In AP Stats, you mentioned that things clicked for you. So what specifically about that class changed how you thought about your future?
Yeah, so I think growing up, I just kind of imagined that I would go into humanities, but the class that I took at Athens Drive, shout out Miss Caticcio, was very accessible, and I think it was just much more common sense based than I assumed. I'd heard from friends that had taken stats, a lot of people who were really gifted in math, it just didn't click well for them. But I actually think with a humanities background, it clicked very well for me because a lot of it is common sense.
Mm-hmm. Did you imagine stats as something you'd use alongside political science, or did you already see it as a possibility of a career?
So initially, I do think that I thought that it would only be something that I kind of used as a complementary discipline with political science, and that belief kind of was shaken up as I became more aware of jobs and uh, what you could actually do with a statistics degree.
Looking back, what skills or habits from high school have stuck with you in your career now?
Hmm. That's a good question. Um, I think kind of having more of a common sense read on the studies that I work on and just trying to really understand the reasons why the studies are set up in the way that they're set up. Um, I think that's something that's really stuck with me. Um, just a lot of background information, looking into things like the statistical analysis plan for the studies that I work in and stuff like that. And just getting the background, I think that's really one of the main things.
We're kind of gonna shift gears and move on into college and early college time. When you started college, you majored in political science. How did your interest in statistics evolve during those years?
It's another good question. As I worked my way through my degree, my political science degree at North Carolina State University, um, I did see a lot of areas where statistics was necessary. Um, and I think that really primed me to dig a little bit deeper into statistics and programming specifically. And in one of the courses where I actually used SPSS, I discovered that I was a lot more interested in statistics and thinking about why we were collecting the data that we were collecting and what kind of variables were significant um, than I was originally interested in whatever we were talking about in terms of political science and policy and things like that. So I really just became more interested in data than I became interested in public policy.
Were there any courses or professors at NCSU that had a big influence on your decision to pursue stats in the future?
Yeah, certainly. I think the biggest influence was actually my AP Stats teacher from high school, but certainly through college as well. There were a lot of professors that really, in survey sampling, my survey sampling class, for example, um, that really opened my eyes to how interesting it was to think about these things from a statistical perspective. Um, and it's certainly filtered through the lens of political science, but um, again, that was a very programming heavy course, and I think that professor was just very welcoming, very clear in their explanations, and supporting a class who was very ignorant to programming through SAS or R or anything like that. And they just made it very accessible to me, which just reaffirmed my interest in statistics.
How did your experiences in both political science and statistics give you a different perspective compared to students who only focused on one field?
Yeah, so I think if you went into college with the idea that you were going to pursue stats, um, from my experience with colleagues at the time in NC State, I think that they had, like me, very set ideas of where they would go. And for me, it was, and this was just my experience, I felt like it was a little more jarring because I didn't have as much time to think about what I would do with statistics afterwards. But I think it made me more open to pursuing different career paths rather than just deciding that I was set on one career path. And that's ultimately how I ended up in a field that I never would have guessed that I would have ended up in.
That's really interesting to hear. Now we'll be talking about your internship and your career starts. You talked about the job fairs at NCSU being a turning point. What was that like? What was the first encounter like when you met the biostats managers?
Yeah, that was, it certainly was a turning point. It was something I did rather on a whim. The particular job fair where I happened to meet who would then later become my managers, it was a little unusual, the layout. It was not very crowded. I would have expected it to have been much more crowded. I don't know, to be honest with you, that the whoever was managing those job fairs had gotten the information out to enough students, which might have actually worked out to the benefit of the people who did go. But it really gave me, consequently, a lot of time to speak to the two managers. There was a manager, and then there was the director of the biostatistics department. And so that one-on-one time allowed me to really kind of get a lot of information about what my day-to-day would look like. And I was very interested from that point. I'm thankful that the environment was a little bit more intimate than I would have expected a job fair to be.
This might be a little hard to remember, but what do you remember most about starting your internship just days after graduation?
Actually, that's not very difficult to remember at all. It was pretty chaotic. I went from, it was a bit of a risk to change directions so late. I went from thinking that I would go down the route of being a professor, TAing for political science courses or history courses, to seeking out a statistical programming role. And so it was a quick turnaround. It was only a couple of days after graduation, but that chaos kind of was representative of that whole period, really. Just struggling to get into the courses, struggling to make the move happen and everything. But I think the flexibility that I had during that period really paid off well, obviously now. So that's something I would tell people is to try to be a little bit flexible in that time of your life where you're looking for your first job.
You were just saying that like your typical route wasn't necessarily math or science. So did you face any self-doubt stepping into the stats programming at first?
Yeah, I still have self-doubt. I think there's a lot of, I hear this from my friends in all manner of roles, whether it's law or medical or, anything. I think it's easy to get imposter syndrome. You know your best and worst moments. You know those courses that you took in college that you really should have studied more for and you didn't do as well as you know you could have. And all of that, I think, enters your mind more when you're doing something that you haven't been mentally prepared for years to do. I really think, again, kind of just accepting that that's a possibility and reminding yourself that you are where you are for a reason, just kind of being flexible again in that regard, that really helps out.
So now let's talk about how your career grew. You've worked in the same role across various companies. What has kept you motivated and growing in statistical programming?
Yeah, that's a great question. Through the change of leadership, my company was acquired several times, as you mentioned. I think there is a tendency to try and get out because volatile periods might be ahead. But I honestly, it sounds, cliche, but I had a great manager for a very long time. I think at least one of the two of you would understand what I mean because it was your dad. But he really helped with whatever I was dealing with. Uncertainty about what was coming, with the multiple acquisitions. And I think he also helped give me a steady kind of supply of new studies to work on, interesting like therapeutic areas to dive into, and just new roles, whatever he thought that I hadn't worked on yet that would benefit my career to work on. So I really owe that a lot to management, to kind of keep me working on fresh new things and kind of keep my interest, but also kind of help grow what I could say I'd done, and then that felt a lot less intimidating to tackle, more complicated studies and, some things that were sort of related to what I had already been working on.
So currently, what do you enjoy most about your work at Fortria?
I think I really enjoy something that I've enjoyed since I started, which is solving problems in unique ways. I work alongside other programmers that will QC the data sets, the listings, the tables, the figures, whatever we're working on. And everyone has a different way of doing these assignments. And so we need to get the same answer because there is an answer. But it's really just kind of seeing the ways that people are able to use programming to solve these problems. Massaging the data and really just like all forms of analysis. Everyone does everything differently, and I think just trying to do it the most efficient way possible, but also being a little unique, that's what I find most interesting.
Now let's move on to wrapping up and reflection. So, if you could go back to your high school self, what advice would you give about being open to new paths?
I think I would really just tell myself that your ideas about what you'll end up doing and what career would suit you and what would be beneficial, those are great. If there's a voice, I think in your, somewhere in the back of your head that's telling you, this field is interesting to me, but I'm not qualified, I don't have the mind for that. I think I would just say, don't listen to the voices that tell you, you can't do this, I'm not suited for this, and definitely lean into the voice that's telling you, like, I would be interested in this, and, regardless of what my prior experience is, I can do this. that also sounds cliche, but I think that if I'd had that mindset, I would have switched a long time ago, early into college. And while I'm happy with where I ended up now, obviously, who knows, what else I could have done.
That's some really good advice. What's a common misconception people have about stats programming that you wish you knew more students knew about?
These are really good questions. Yeah, I think when you hear statistical programming, it it does just really sound it sounds very technical and boring, but it's really cross-disciplinary. You know, I'm working with pharmaceutical companies. There's lots of different statistical programming, but in my field specifically, there's a lot of conversation that happens and a lot of people kind of contributing ideas and trying to solve problems. And I think that's something I would tell people is try to talk to people that actually work in those fields, and they can kind of give you a better idea of maybe some of the things you don't hear about or see when you're just reading a job description.
And on an ending note, when you're looking ahead, what excites you the most about the future of statistics and programming in healthcare?
Yeah, it could be a very exciting future ahead. I think as we implement better tools and technology advances, we should have the capability to have safer clinical trials and to deliver more effective drugs to the market that will help more people. So that technology is it's always a very exciting part of, this field. And I just hope that remains something that's, accessible to people, and that it's more refined than I think what we're seeing now. I think if it's something that is implemented with safety and consistency in mind, we could really see a huge impact in this field. So just safer, more effective drugs, that's always an exciting prospect.
And on that note, we thank you for letting us have you on our podcast today, for your time and your commitment, and for your insights, of course.
Thank you so much for agreeing to record with us.
Thank you for having me.